SMGs have a secret pack-a-punch ability that makes them some of the best weapons in the entire game. But it's not that simple. I've tested out different augments and different attachments. I have the stats, and once you see the results, it's going to change how you use SMGs and potentially how you play Black Ops 7 Zombies forever. As always with these analytical videos, be sure to use the chapters below to skip to whatever section you're most interested in or to the end for the final results. There was a dev talk over 3 months ago after the Zombies beta where Treyarch told us that all SMGs are going to have a close range bonus damage. And if you use the SMGs in Black Ops 7, you will notice that bonus damage when you are in close range. But just how close is this close range? Is it universal? I wanted to know, do attachments affect this? And more importantly, the brand new augment for Deadshot called Dead Point, which increases a point blank damage, does that overlap and does that stack with different attachments? So I decided to go with 3 different SMGs, test out 3 different types of builds, and meticulously test out the range of all of these damage ranges for all of the different loadouts that I tested, and for both my regular Deadshot augment called Deadhead and the new Deadshot augment called Dead Point. Now I will warn you, there are a lot of numbers. I tried to make this as clean and clear as I could, and for as complicated as we're gonna get, believe me, I wrap it up at the end very nicely. But let's jump into our results. Here is our very first page. You can see we have our SMG on the left here. We have the augment that we're using in this column, as well as the different ranges we have. We have the Dead Point range for the brand new Deadshot augment like we talked about. We have the SMG bonus range, that is that extra bonus damage range that they were talking about. And then what I'm calling the normal range. So let's take one SMG at a time here. This is our no range attachments control test. I don't have the damage barrel on. I don't have any range attachments. This is just like a basic Razor build. And I also have the build code here if you want to double check. You can see with my normal Deadhead augment, we obviously don't get the extra bonus damage from Dead Point, so that's not a thing. But for our close range SMG bonus damage, we're dealing 6,701 damage per shot. For our normal range, that drops down significantly to 3,662 damage. And over here, I wanted to check how these ranges compare to the menu range. If you don't know, you could look at the advanced stats in the menu and it will actually show you a range. But spoiler alert, I really wouldn't pay too much attention to that. But we'll get to it. Here is the rate of fire of the SMG because we're going to do some more calculations later. Once I finished the Deadhead augment test, I saved and quit, changed it to Dead Point, and now we do have this bonus range, which gets us a huge damage of 7,615 damage per shot. Unfortunately, without the Deadhead bonus damage, our SMG bonus range goes down to 6,092. Our normal range goes down to 3,329 damage. So in this situation, you are sacrificing Deadhead, which is, a couple hundred more damage at these ranges for the opportunity of this really close range, what do they call it? Point blank range, which deals massive damage. Now, what's important about this damage that might look very enticing, especially with the ridiculous rate of fire this has, the absolutely gut-wrenching, heartbreaking thing about this is that this point blank range is only 1.5 meters. If a zombie is 1.5 meters ahead of you, they're going to start swinging at you and hit you. This thing, when it's point blank, it means you are touching the zombie essentially. It's not quite touching, but you are so dang close. In my personal opinion, this 1.5 meters is absolutely terrible. The only reason you should be dealing damage that close to a zombie is because you're either cornered or, and this is a little bit more practical, there is a super sprinter in your face and you're trying to get them away as quick as possible. But then again, if you're that close to a super sprinter, you might just want to run away instead. Now, let's go ahead and look at these other 2 weapons because you can see this Dead Point, this close range point blank range is 1.5 meters for each of these weapons. It is not dependent on at least any of the SMGs. I need to test it out against other weapon classes, but it is always going to be 1.5 meters, at least with no range attachments. We'll see if attachments affect this later down the line. Interestingly, going to this SMG bonus range, I noticed that each SMG has a different range for this bonus range. And especially when I'm talking about these ranges, I want to be honest here. This is the first time I'm really trying to be specific with meters and measuring distance. I would throw a shock charge on the ground, I would ping a zombie, and then I would shoot it and record what damage number it was, and then try to go higher or lower depending on what I was testing out. It was the very first time I was doing this testing method, so I think there is some inaccuracies in here, even though these are very, very close to the correct ballpark. I would say give or take like half a meter or 1 meter on these things. As I have more practice testing meters in this way, I hopefully it'll be a little bit more accurate, and hopefully if people are playing the game, they can cross-reference this too. But once again, it's the same story as with this razor with all these other weapons. Deadhead is obviously going to get you more damage for these meters, but then you will get a very sizable increase in your DPS in that 1.5 meters. It's only if you're willing to get this close to zombies. You'll notice here, even with the RK9, this is that burst SMG, you are dealing over 10,000 damage to zombies in this 1.5 meter range. Now, the RK9 is also very generous with its damage too, so that's to be expected. But with these results, what I did was I decided to put on every single attachment that I had unlocked that would increase my damage range. And I believe I used the barrel attachment, the laser attachment, and then the very last attachment, the fire mod attachment. All three of those on all three of these SMGs increased damage in some way, shape, or form, or at least they said they did in the menu. And then I went back in game, tested all of these weapons again, and these are the results that we have. Because we didn't change our damage at all, we didn't use a different damage barrel or reduce damage anyway, all of these damage numbers are going to be the exact same. The only thing we changed is the damage range, all the damage range attachments. And as you can see highlighted in green, all of these damage ranges have increased except for the point blank dead point damage range. Yet again, another heartbreaking discovery about this augment. I was so excited for this augment, but 1.5 meters is just terrible territory. If these range attachments made it go for 2 meters, 2.5 meters, 3 meters, maybe you have an argument to be made, but 1.5 meters is just, it's pitiful. Luckily, all of these range attachments, and this is the game-changing part, all of these damage range attachments do increase the SMG bonus damage range. And as you could see, 7 meters, 8 meters, 9 meters with the RK9, we're taking these things from 4.5, 5 meters, 5.5, all the way to 7, 8, or 9 meters with this damage range. And it is at this point you'll notice that the menu damage range, at least that very first range, is not accurate, unfortunately. You might notice, hey, 17 meters is 17 meters, but then we have 21 meters here, 23 meters here, 12 meters here, 17 there, even back here, 10 and 10 is good, but then 14 and 11, 7 and 10, I don't know exactly what this is. I didn't see any sort of consistency from it, except for the fact that when we're looking at each individual weapon, if you increase the menu stat meters, that does mean that the in-game meters will also increase. It's just that the exact numbers won't line up to what the menu says, but we'll talk about that later. So I was excited. Oh my goodness, we can actually extend this crazy good bonus damage range with our attachments. So I wonder what happens if I put on the damage barrel, the headshot barrel. Unfortunately, that meant that I needed to sacrifice the long barrel, which got you even more damage range. So as a kind of mixture between the two, we have this as a result. And of course, with the damage barrel, we are going to get a noticeable increase, and in some cases, a big increase in damage for a lot of these weapons, but the range increase is going to be sort of heavily affected. You can see this 5.2 right here was 7 meters, so that is a pretty big hit. 6 meters for the carbon is down from 8 meters, and 7.2 meters for the RK9 is pretty good, but it's still not 9 meters. Now, I do think that there are some muzzle attachments that increase your range as well, and some aftermarket parts, and we'll talk about attachments later. But now we have a lot of different things to play around with. We've got our range, we've got this SMG close range bonus damage, we've got dead head versus dead point, and now we've got our damage barrel versus this long range barrel. So what exactly are the exact numbers? How many or how much of a bonus are all of these different things? Well, I of course ran the numbers and I have the results right here. As we know from last year, and I double checked here, Deadhead gives you a bonus 20% damage increase, which is really solid, but Dead Point, as you see here, gives you a 25% increase in damage, but that is only for this 1.5 meter range. So yes, this close range bonus damage is obviously more than the SMG bonus damage, but again, it's in that 1.5 meters, which I'm not a big fan of. In terms of the SMG bonus damage and the SMG bonus damage range, this is going to vary from weapon to weapon. It's not like you can take any regular damage and then increase it by 50% or 75%, and boom, now you have the bonus damage range. No, these seem to be individually balanced, and that felt pretty weird to me. But then I looked at my DPS spreadsheet. Here's the DPS spreadsheet, and as you can see, I have two different sections for SMGs because I knew about this bonus damage range. But I wanted to point out here this MPC-25, this MSMC. It's dealing, 4,400 damage in its normal range, but then when we go to the bonus damage range, this MPC is dealing nearly double that. So that's almost a 100% increase. But then when we look at like the Raiden 45K with this 4,300 damage and then go to its close range bonus damage, it's only 6,800, which is nowhere near the amount of bonus damage that this other SMG got. So yes, every single SMG is going to have a different close range bonus damage. Now, this is important because some SMGs are going to be stronger in its normal damage range, but then different SMGs are going to be stronger in its close range bonus damage range. The best example of this is the brand new Stormwolf 45 and its prestige attachment. In the close range of this SMG, the base Stormwolf is going to have a higher DPS, but if we go down to its normal damage range, because of the way that it scales or that each attachment and each damage profile is different, it's the prestige attachment that's going to have a higher DPS. That's because the scaling from the close range damage to the normal damage, or the other way around, the normal damage to the close range damage is different per attachment and per like damage profile, it looks like. So very interesting stuff here. Hopefully that all made sense. But as we're talking about damage per second, I'm sure you're curious about what I found about all of these different ranges. And that is luckily what this sheet is for. You could see this is going to be all of our information organized by what SMG it is. So this is the Razor with no range attachments, maximum range attachments, and the damage barrel plus other range attachments. And then I've done the same thing for the other two SMGs over here. There's the carbon right there, all this information we already saw. But then what I did is I calculated the DPS of all of these things so that we get a very real and very practical way of looking at all of our options. And this is the fun part. The Razor is technically one of the best SMGs in the game. It has a very low damage per shot, but the insane rate of fire makes it have a phenomenal DPS, even at this normal damage range. So without any attachments, you could see this close range damage, this 4.5 meter bonus SMG damage is already dealing 159,000 DPS. That is phenomenal. After that range though, it goes drastically down to 87,000 DPS. But if you were to put on all of the damage range barrels and all the damage range attachments, you were getting that 159,000 DPS all the way out until 7 meters. And then after 7 meters, that's where that 87,000 DPS is going to kick in. But if you put on the damage barrel and then emphasize the range attachments, you're going to bump up that SMG bonus damage all the way up to 180,000 DPS, but that's only going to be for 5 meters. But then after that 5 meters, your DPS is going to be 98,000, which is very respectable. And so this is the question that you all need to answer. Well, I guess you should ask yourselves if you want to run dead point for this bonus damage. I highly encourage you to ping zombies at 1.5 meters and just see for yourself how close it is. Hopefully I've showed you some video examples of just how devastatingly close it is, because in my opinion, it's just so impractical. I don't think there's really any niche situation where I would want to have this, especially if you're using dead head. Really the only difference is that 5% increase in damage between 20 and 25%. And I just don't see that being very practical. So if we're going with dead head and we're just looking at range versus DPS, would you rather put on that damage barrel and have really solid damage, but maybe not so much range? Or do you want to just push this SMG bonus damage as far as it'll go, sacrificing a little bit of your damage per shot? And remember what we said, each SMG has different damage ranges, so it might depend on your SMG, because you can see here with the Carbon 57, our maximum range attachments gets all the way out to 8, but with the damage barrel, it's still a respectable 6 meters. That is very, very good. 6 meters with 149,000 DPS, that's really good. And with the range attachments outside of that 8 meters, you're dropping all the way down to 64,000 DPS, which is really bad. But with the damage barrel, it's 83,000 DPS, which is really respectable. And the same story for the RK9. The RK9 has a really good range. This is so cool. With the maximum range attachments, this bonus range is all the way out to 9 meters. If you switch out the long barrel for the damage barrel, it is still 7.2 meters, which, if you remember, is longer than the maximum range for the Razor with its range attachments. That, I mean, to me, that makes the RK9 really viable, because even with the damage barrel, you're still getting over 100,000 DPS in this close range bonus damage. That's really good. And as a burst weapon, it needs all the help it can get. Now, you might be asking yourself this, and you might be really confused. Donuts, there are all these numbers, it's all these ranges, meters. What does this really practically look like? Luckily, I am going going to montage through a lot of different training spots on Ashes of the Damned, not Astromorn, but Ashes of the Damned, and I'm pinging zombies in all of these different locations, and hopefully the camera is steady enough you could see all of these different meters. What we need to answer is, what is the normal range for you to be shooting zombies? Now, we kind of have an advantage here because zombies are always walking towards us, especially once we get past round 50, we get the super sprinters. They are going to be sprinting towards us, which is a little clue in where I'm going with this. And if you're watching the gameplay, hopefully you'll notice, at least from my brain and my experience, at the very closest, I'm shooting zombies at about 4 meters. If they get any closer than 4 meters or maybe 3 meters, I'm going to start thinking about running away or going somewhere else. A comfortable range where I'm normally shooting zombies is going to start around 5 meters and go all the way up to around 8 meters or 9 meters. You could see some of those zombies are pinged at 10 meters, but if you look at that individual zombie, they're kind of far away. They're kind of not like the first zombie you're shooting at. And so for the most part, the biggest group, the biggest target that I'm acquiring when I'm shooting zombies in this horde, it's gonna be anywhere from 4 to 9 meters, I'll say. And I don't know about you, but that to me says that I really should start prioritizing the damage range attachments on the SMGs. Because if we go back to our spreadsheets here, if we have no range attachments at all, there's going to be 4.5 meters there, 5 meters there, and then the RK9, which is really good, it's going to be 5.5 meters. And so while that is good, it could be so much better. Even if we have the damage barrel, we can increase that to be very, very practical in my opinion. 6 meters is really good. 7.2 meters is really nice. You will still notice that second damage range coming into play, but I believe if we stack the right range attachments on our weapons, this can be a very game-changing effect. But I know what you're thinking. If the in-game menu doesn't show us the exact meters, and if there's no consistent formula for us to know where this close range bonus damage is, how are we going to be able to tell? How are we going to practically be able to recognize if our range attachments are working or not? You could do what I did and ping zombies and measure this and measure that, but that's not really fun. That's not what really you want to do mid-zombies game. So all you need to do is turn on your damage numbers if you're curious about it, and just take a look at the 2 main numbers you have. You should have a really big number at that close range damage, and then that should drop off at a medium range or a normal range. And if, as you're killing zombies most of the time, you're getting that bigger number, that means you are killing zombies within that close range SMG bonus range. And if you don't believe me, I would really test it for yourself. Put on those range increasing attachments and see just how many more of those bigger damage numbers you see throughout your casual play. And that brings us to our attachment builds. What attachments increase damage range? And what are the trade-offs? What is this going to cost? Well, obviously there is a damage barrel and there is a long barrel. The long barrel, I think, has a pretty significant effect on this, but if you do want to go with the damage barrel because you are worried about the ranges outside of the bonus range, there is a, I believe, laser that will get you more damage range, and you will be sacrificing some hipfire spread. Luckily, SMGs are inherently good with their hipfire, and there is a Deadshot minor augment that increases or reduces your hipfire spread naturally, and there are stocks and there are muzzle attachments that further reduce your hipfire spread, so you have options of how to build this if you want that damage range increasing laser. And then there is a fire mod option, that very last attachment option, although that is competing with FMJ and rapid fire. And I know that sounds pretty bad, but if you're a rapid fire person, I just want to let you know, and you know what, let's actually show you. These are the rate of fires for all of the SMGs. Most of them are over 1,000, which is fantastic. This DPS spreadsheet that I have here is all tested without rapid fire on it. And strangely enough here, the RK9 might be something you put the rapid fire on because that does sacrifice some of your range, but because the RK9, as we just saw, has a pretty good range naturally, that could balance out pretty well. But I will warn you, there are other attachments that will reduce your damage range. I think rapid fire might be one of them, but specifically the brand new suppressor that is free for everybody right now, I think it's a weekly challenge unlock, that will reduce your damage range, and naturally it will reduce this SMG bonus damage range. So be very careful to avoid that with your SMGs. Now, if you are looking for a suppressor, the monolithic suppressor doesn't say it in the menus, but if you go to the advanced stats, the monolithic suppressor appears to increase our damage range. Again, unfortunately, the menu is not going to be super accurate to this, and there's no like consistent formula that we have to like translate this into this bonus damage range. But from now on, I am 100% always running that monolithic suppressor on my SMGs just for a little bit more range. And between you and me, I may very well take off my hipfire steady aim laser for that damage range laser. Because if I'm shooting zombies point blank range, it's good to be accurate with our hipfire, yes, but if we're too accurate with our hipfire, it could be even harder to aim, especially when you're dealing with super sprinters. Because I think this is going to change the way I go to high rounds. I love training in high rounds. I think training in Black Ops 7 is so good. And now I am absolutely going to have an SMG in one of my 3 weapon slots, because let's take a look at our DPS spreadsheet right here. The bottom numbers here, obviously with the smaller damage numbers, this is the normal range, but this light blue up here, I think it's going to be dark blue for you because I have the night mode on, but with this insane damage within this damage range and our crazy rate of fire, these are the DPSs of all of the SMGs. I'll save you reading this because there is not a single SMG under 100,000 DPS. Let me say that again. Every single SMG is going to deal over 100,000 DPS within their close range damage. To put that into perspective, every single SMG is killing at least 2 zombies, if not more than 2 zombies per second at health cap. And when you're dealing with super sprinters in your face, my goodness, this thing is going to be so useful. Any SMG is going to be so useful. You can see our shots to kill right here, again at health cap, really good. That Stormwolf feels fantastic. I use that at high rounds. 5 shots to kill with the respectable rate of fire that it has, that 951. That felt really good at health cap. Now I forgot to test out how many rounds that this Raiden has, dang it. But as you'll see, most of these SMGs, they're getting over 10 kills per magazine at health cap, remember, at health cap. And with collateral damage and ammo mods and all that stuff, that's easily going to be so much more. There are some elites, this is what's really cool, I've done this a couple times, going up to a Zersa and then shock charging it and then just barrel stuffing the Zersa and its weak spot with an SMG. Most of the time, you are going to be able to kill that Zersa in 1 magazine, except for the base Kogat, the MPC, unfortunately, and the Razor. The Razor just does a little bit less damage per shot than it needs to, but if you've been following the DPS spreadsheet in any capacity this year, you will notice that these stats are among the best in the entire game. I have been sleeping on these SMGs because I really thought that that bonus damage range was just kind of impractical, but the fact that the damage range attachments dramatically change the range of this close range bonus damage is just so exciting. SMGs deserve a weapon slot at high rounds, and now they might just be some of the most interesting weapons to build in Black Ops 7 Zombies, with all the trade-offs and how you want to build it and what you're doing, whether you're going for Easter egg runs or high round runs or just basic runs. Let's recap. Every single SMG has a close range bonus damage. This bonus range is different for every single SMG. Also, the bonus damage you get within this range is different for every SMG as well. But the biggest discovery, the mind-blowing discovery, is that damage range attachments will affect this close range bonus damage, whether that's positive or negative. If you stack the damage range attachments, you can get a healthy amount of extra meters for this bonus range, which makes this bonus range very practical if you build your weapon right. But remember, the range and the damage itself is independent for every single SMG. With the 3 SMGs I tested, this bonus range by default was anywhere from 4.5 meters to 5.5 meters, and with the maximum amount of range attachments, we increased those from anywhere from 7 to 9 meters. From my own personal eye test, practically speaking, you should be engaging and shooting zombies anywhere within 4 meters to 8 meters. Anything closer than 4 meters, in my opinion, is a little bit too close. Unless, of course, we're talking about super sprinters, in which case they're just going to be close either way. Now, you might think about running Dead Point, the brand new major augment for Deadshot. And Dead Point does give you a 25% increase in damage, which is 5% more than the Dead Head bonus percent at 20%. However, that 25% increase is only limited to 1.5 meters. And unfortunately, the range attachments do not affect this whatsoever. At least in terms of the SMGs, at least in terms of when I'm testing this right now today, personally speaking, 1.5 meters is close enough for zombies to hit you. And in my opinion, Dead Point is just going to be pointless. And so it's going to be my recommendation to run Dead Head as a Deadshot major augment. And then I would personally try to stack as many range attachments on your SMGs as you can. I think think I'm still gonna go with the headshot barrel instead of the long-range barrel, but that could be dependent on which SMG you're using. For a quick reference, you can look at the in-game detailed menu stats. However, those are not accurate, at least in terms of the literal number, but they are accurate in the sense that if the number goes up, it will increase the range. If the number goes down, it will decrease the range. It's just that the exact range is going to be different in-game. And as a bonus, the monolithic suppressor appears to increase range, at least in the in-game menu. Even though the description doesn't say it, the advanced stats show it. Don't be afraid to get creative with your attachments. There is the Deadshot augment, which reduces your hipfire spread. There are stocks that also reduce your hipfire spread. SMGs naturally have a faster rate of fire, so you don't necessarily need rapid fire. There is the double tap augment, which gets you more damage for penetration damage, so you might not need FMJs. To test whether or not you're within the close range bonus damage, it is helpful to at least temporarily turn on damage numbers. You will notice a big number and a small number, and if you see most of the time you're hitting the big number, that means your damage range is pretty good. Also worth noting, every single SMG deals over 100,000 DPS within its close range bonus damage. These specific DPSs were tested with the headshot barrel, as well as the dead head major augment for Deadshot. This also includes double time for double tap, but does not include rapid fire. At the end of the day, the SMGs are pretty average weapons until you get to this close range bonus damage, in which case they turn into the best weapons in the game. So if you're going to high rounds, you want to take out elite enemies incredibly quickly, or you just want to destroy zombies in close quarters, be sure you're running the range attachments because the SMGs are all-stars of the close quarters. And if you want to see one of my new favorite SMGs in the game, be sure to check out this video and stay beautiful.